Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Always Be Testing podcast. I'm your host, Ty DeGrange, and I'm really excited to talk to Sydney Sloan today. Sydney, how are you?
I did great. We were just talking, like, had a good workout yesterday, get up early now. So no, I'm doing really good. It's been a busy week already though.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. We were saying that I think we're at Tuesday. That's like one of those things where you're kind of
Yeah.
like, what day is it? And
Yep.
it feels a little bit like a Thursday.
It does. That is this week for sure.
It's a lot going on this week, but it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And who knew middle of July? I got my F-45 in this morning, so it's my new thing. Like you. I'm going from berries to F-45. I'm like, I get my
Okay.
workout fix in. I've got
Yeah.
to get it somehow.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Um, Well, I am really, really excited to talk to you today. We've had some great conversations. Sydney is the CMO of G2. It's just the place to find your software tools and assess and see reviews and see what's going on with them. She's got a ton of knowledge to share and a ton of experience, so it's going to be a good one. Let's jump in.
All right.
Um, Sydney, you are definitely, I would say, considered a champion of customer marketing. What are the most effective ways B2B marketers can turn loyal customers into brand advocates to really grow, become a growth engine?
Yeah. My first customer marketing job was like back in 2010 at Adobe. And I think it was kind of before it was um, a hip thing, and it was before SaaS. And so what I loved about thinking about the customer as we moved into the SaaS era was now it's different. You can't just buy software and put it on the shelf or like force people to use it. It's people's choice, and so you have to delight every user. And if you do that, if you have technology that people love, which is the kind of space that I like to work in, then you can build those brand advocates. And so I think it first starts with, you know, a consistent customer experience, from your brand to the experience you have in product to the way that you communicate with people all over the place in social channels, and everywhere. And if you do that, if you actually truly, and I use the word love, if you love on your customers, then and you deliver them value, then you can build those brand advocates. And now more than ever, the voice of the customer is super important, and we could talk about that at greater depth. But just like the TDLR is that, now that people are no longer going to search, they're going to their favorite LLMs. The power of that customer voice is playing stronger than ever because that's what the LLMs are indexing on. So they're
Yeah,
looking at Reddit, they're looking at G2, and that's where they're finding the answers. And so now more than ever, you need to have your customers advocating for you because that's what people are looking for, and that's what the LLMs
yeah,
are indexing on. Yeah.
that you nailed it. That is, I mean, talk about the hottest of topics and
Yeah.
something we're seeing firsthand in partner marketing, something G2 is, getting some tailwind on, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
You said something really interesting in that first point around, the word love, and then we don't always associate that with B2B
Yeah.
marketing and software, but I think the I think people that are doing it right, that are putting forth real effort towards, really serving customers are truly passionate fans and putting love and heart and soul into it. How do you kind of talked about keeping it connected and keeping the consistent messaging across all those touch points. How have you seen that work in your great experience?
Yeah.
How are some ways people might think about that?
The best example that I have was at SalesLoft, and love was part of our mission and vision. So we wanted to create a world where sellers were loved by the buyers they served. That was our tagline. And the way that we figured out how to do that was actually to, as executives and as the leadership team, love on our employees. We're an employee first company. And we felt like if we respected our employees, that they would then take that and provide that same sentiment, feeling to the customers. And that worked. And I think the thing that is what people would say was, your product and your competitor's product are exactly the same, but I just felt more connected to your team. And that's still true in the sales process. Even in the age of AI, we're still at the point where the sales process for enterprise and for mid-market outside of PLG is a human to human connection. It's one of the few things that we can still say is
Hmm.
going to be human to human. And so you really think about, like, how do I make sure that the brand experience is consistent from first touch, and that's probably some campaign or social engagement, you know to when they experience your brand. And now we know they're experiencing it on LLMs, and they come to your they come to the peer review site, so they see what customers are saying. They come to your website, so they experience that. And so we audited like every single touch point, and how do we make sure that we keep that voice consistent? And I think that is having a strong culture, how we think about the way that we talk about our commitment to customers before we talk about our product, which doesn't
Yeah.
happen often, right? And so
Yeah.
embedding yourself in customer story and customer voice. And I think it made it a little bit easier because we were selling to sellers. So we're selling to people like ourselves. And I think about that a lot when, in this new era, should you have more experienced customers as part of your sales team, because they can make that connection. They can have the empathy of the problem and challenge you're trying to face because they've done it before. And I've seen some great companies, like those are the best evangelists. And I've seen that repeat over and time again. Shoot, I'm an evangelist for G2. The reason I'm here is because I was so successful with it and the companies that I had been previously. So now I have 5 customer calls this week, right? And I start with, hey, the reason I'm here is because I was able to build our brand on G2, and it was a differentiator for us. And I figured out how to take those powerful reviews and turn them into a revenue stream for us. And so
Love
it's way
that.
easy for me to tell that story to other CMOs. Yeah.
Wow. So you were definitely a G2 evangelist before you even started.
Yeah. I was on the advisory board, Ty, and I think, when people say, "Well, how do you get started? Like, how do you build a community? How do you build brand advocates?" Like, I always want to start with advisory boards. I'm a big fan, and I've been on them, and I like to have them. And I think of you can have multiple types of advisory boards. You can have your executive advisory board. You can have like a champions advisory board. They're different, right? You're connecting all the important people in your accounts. And so what you might do for an executive advisory board, like at G2, we go to Napa for a few days. We bring in like real experts. We talk about challenges that are not even related to G2, like, and we're building this connection and network that's so important. But for the product ones or the champion ones, they're different. They might be in our world a customer marketer or a product marketer that are responsible for the voice of the customer programs. And so their challenges are different, and the feedback we get from them is different. And so, as many as I can get, I'll take. And that starts the foundation. And then from that, they start to speak. You get them to be advocates in your wherever you're building that community. And I was just really important having this conversation with Yako from Winning by Design. They're a I would say a go-to-market enablement company now, and they just had their recent summit, and he was like really pushed on the user. Like, if we make sure that every user is seeing value, how do we create them into that accelerator of a champion? And he created a formula around it, because not only do they take it with you, but they tell other people. And it changes the focus from what we've been talking about, an account-based focus, to now a user-based focus. And how do you track to make sure that users are getting value? And then how do you enable that user to advocate for you? And so I'm a big fan of like referral programs. Why not let users create referrals and get paid for it? I'm like, what is the cost to book a meeting? That is what you give the value to your referral program. Because if an advocate is pulling in their network to then take a meeting with you, that is going to be a much higher opportunity to close. And I don't think enough
Love
people
that.
do that. And so it's like,
Yeah.
why not? Yeah.
You're speaking my language on so many levels, and to leverage. customers, evangelists, that are over time becoming more meaningful and more promoters and more partners.
Yeah.
It's really central to our trust thesis and the observations and data that we're observing. So it's fantastic that you're tapping into that. And it definitely goes back to what you said earlier about the importance of that human connection. It's all this AI stuff that's happening. It's great. It's helping us be more efficient, but there's certain areas where that human element is really not going anywhere. If anything, it's becoming really valuable in my humble opinion.
Yeah. But it's going to be
That's
hard. I
amazing.
mean, we're going to see something different, right? Like think about
Yeah.
the pre-Zoom era or the pre-digital era, right? Where we felt like
Yeah.
we had to be in person and all these meetings, and then we figured out all how to work a new way and how to communicate a new way. I think we're going to have
Yeah.
another big transformation on that too. I mean, it's just
Yes.
AI makes so many things easier,
Yes.
and aligns to people's preferences of how they want to communicate, how they want to buy, how they want to be served. My mind is being blown at some of the things that I'm seeing today and like synthetic AI and like, they give better answers. And so we
Yeah.
do have to figure out, what role humans play. And there's this great
Yes.
story that we have this roadshow going on right now called AI in Action. And Tim Sanders is our AI like evangelist expert, and he tells a story about the Rick Rubin economy. I didn't know who Rick Rubin was until he started sharing this story. Do you know who Rick? Your face looks like you do. And
Yeah.
so he plays this snippet from 60 Minutes where Anderson Cooper is interviewing him, and he's like, Rick Rubin is a producer who's produced some of the most successful bands in the world, and won all these awards. And so Anderson asks him, do you play any instruments? And he's like, no, I don't. And he's like, do you know how to work a board? And he's like, no, I don't. And he's like, so what do you do? And he said, I'm not going to get it perfect, but he's like, people pay me for my taste and opinion, and I seem to do well for them. And so it's this idea that judgment, right, where AI can predict things, it can't judge, it doesn't have taste. And so we have to really think about, what do we stand for? Where does my experience and opinion play a role? How do I make sure that is applied in the age of AI, which is good judgment. So that's Rick Rubin. I have another story. Sorry, I'm going to tell you two like back to back. One
I
just
love
one,
it.
one made
Let's
me think
go.
of the next one, which is a very good friend, Carrie Lou Dietrich. She's a marketing advisor. Um, she is consulting for Lovable, very hot company right now. And so
Love
we
it.
were just on this
She's great.
CMO group chat that we talk once a month about AI innovation. And she's like, well, I'm in Sweden at the Lovable campus, and she's commenting on how young the people are, and that they just want to prompt everything, and that what's cool about it is they're uninhibited. They don't know any different, so they just are like, I'm going to prompt this AI engine to do these things, but they're missing the fundamentals. She's like, well, let's talk about our customer before we go off and do all these other things. And she gives like three examples of, just the lack of experience and not knowing, that, and trusting AI too much can also take you down a path. So we've got to
Yeah.
figure that out, right? We've got to figure out like experience and judgment, and what role that plays, but also
Yep.
unleashing people and their creativity that's going to, think of things that we never did before. So
I love that. I,
it's the wild west. We are in a new frontier.
Yeah, and the beautiful two stories that beautifully show kind of like that pendulum along the spectrum of like where we are now, all the things that are coming, all the things that we're trying to figure out. So love that and love what you're
Yeah.
thinking about.
Yeah.
Just building on that a little bit and playing off of the role at G2, what you're trying to tackle as CMO, all of these trends kind of converging. What are you most excited about right now?
Uh, I think what is exciting and also terrifying is that we're all at the starting line together, and we all have an equal chance of winning. Whether you've been doing this for 30 plus years or you've been doing it for under 3, we are going to figure out a new way. and what we do today is not what we'll do tomorrow. And so that is super exciting. And, I've already seen, like, just in the past 6 months, the divide getting bigger. The people that are
Yeah.
embracing AI, integrating into the way they work, really, like, I'm
Yeah.
advocating. I'm like, just turn off your nurtures. Like, don't just turn them off. You don't need them. Like, we need to think differently. We need to think signal to action in seconds, and build for that, and build out our all this AI generated content and response systems, and how do we get this insight into the right place at the right time. And it's not going to be in like marketing automation platforms that have, like, these just set it and forget it nurtures.
Yeah.
And we have to go discover new places. And so, yeah, I think, it is a whole new world, and we're all just trying to figure it out. And I think, especially for those of us that have been doing this a while, it's exciting. And it's like, it's all of
Yeah.
a sudden like discovering a new, like, if you've never been to
Yeah.
Asia before, like, and like you ate your
Yeah.
first like amazing, food, like, this
Yeah.
just, it's
Yeah.
exciting.
Totally.
And so, yeah, that is, I mean, a year from now,
No.
we'll be doing things completely differently.
Yeah, it's the pace is insane. To
Hmm.
be testing the comic browser, what was it over the last couple of weeks?
Oh, you have, yeah.
And now OpenAI has the agent option now, and it's insanity. The speed at which we're talking about making these changes. I'm sure similar to you all, we're doing a lot of things internally to kind of get people encouraged, give them the time, space, energy to test these tools, encourage these tools. At some point, it becomes kind of part of the language that you're utilizing. So
Right.
it's really fascinating to jump into some, maybe something a little less, a little more functional. You kind of made a good reference to like, hey, the nurturers are kind of going to need to go. What do you think? In your mind, tactically, strategically, like what sort of replaces that? You talked about those one-on-one
Mm.
conversations and alluded to that a little bit. Like, what do you see being the thing or things that maybe goes over that in the priority list of things to do?
Well, I touched on the one. I think this idea of signal to action, and really,
Love
trying to
it.
find where those signals are. And maybe it's because the world I live in, right? Like, we are a strong buying signal, and so how do you start to parse that out, and really understand the ones
Yeah,
that drive conversion? I think the other thing about that is, you know, and we did it. This is kind of funny. We did this at Jive when I worked there. We didn't put people into nurtures. We put them into the community. And so I do think, like, the conversation,
mm,
is equally important. And so the question is, are they going to have the conversation in the LLM? Or are we going to create space and place for people to continue a conversation versus just get a bunch of
yeah,
boring emails? So if they're not ready to buy it, like, where can they go? And how do you feed where they want to go? So I do think that owned community is another big part of the future equation. And what's interesting about G2 is we look at it from two sides. So, because we have the buyers as a community, millions of buyers, as well as the seller audience, the people that represent their products on G2. And so we think about that. Like, we have an icon community, which is our top buyers and the people that leave reviews. And it's like, what do they want to learn? How do they learn from each other? They want to showcase their expertise. And so it's like, interesting. So if we have somebody that's coming, now we have G2.ai, you can ask it, and go through a conversation with it. But maybe you want to then be put in contact with a real person who has a similar tech setup as you do. Now we're talking futures, this isn't current, but it's like, maybe we can facilitate connection between people, and or put them into a space where a conversation is happening around, hey, I'm moving off my marketing automation platforms, what should I do next? Like, why couldn't that be a community conversation? And so I think those two parts are, immediate actions to signals, and then community owned community conversations where people can come and interact, as they are in between, you know buying phases of their
yeah,
transition. sharing that, like, we still don't yet have a place that I found. Please tell me if I do. Please DM me, like, where people can actually share their prompts. I pick them up off LinkedIn when people are kind enough to be like, hey, I just did this prompt and here it is. But
Yeah,
like, why don't we have a community where people are doing that?
it's
So
insane. I
yeah.
your that answer gave me, oh my goodness, like my brain's going wild thinking about all the possibilities. And I think to think about things in more of a community way, and that signal to noise, and that and picking up those positive signals of what it means to leave a review, what it means to read a review, what it means to share, what it means to tap into, the AI functionality of G2, and ask questions and interact. And like you said, wow, it really opens up a lot of possibilities. And the community themes come up a lot. I think in the consumer space, I think about Glossier. Like, I think they kind of use that to put themselves on the map in my recall in terms of growth strategy. It was done to a T. Um, it's come up a lot on this podcast around B2B and
Okay.
SaaS businesses. And so I think you are absolutely nailing that. And I think that's really exciting. Where would you rather interact, on an email outbound thread, or in a community, right?
Right.
So I think it kind of brings up
And the
the
in-person
best.
aspect of that too. We see, like, the events are making a comeback, and so that's cool. Like, that people want to
Yeah,
come and share and spend
yeah,
time together. Maybe that element of digital has gotten us, too far disconnected. And again, in this time of like shared learning,
yeah,
what's the best way for people to learn? And for some, it is being in person. Like, all our
yeah,
roadshows have sold out. And and they're like, we did it like a power
yeah,
packed half a day, and they're like, we wanted to stay longer. Like, who says they want to stay longer? But we
yeah.
are seeing that.
Wow.
And so I think that's going to have a piece to play too. I'll add one more thing too, Ty, and this all goes into the same thread, and I'm sure it's also been talked about at your podcast. But that brand, right? Brand has to make a comeback, and because that is what is still going to be influence and stand out, especially in this time of insane innovation. So you mentioned Glossier. I think of like somebody that did it really well in our space was Clay. They went and they hired like 75 influencers in a month period, and all of a sudden they went from nobody to somebody. And they're changing the way that they talk about their sellers, their go-to-market engineers, like they're creating roles. And their brand's really fun, right?
Yeah,
Their conference called Sculpt, their number one partners, Kiln,
love it.
having fun with brand too.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I do think that where we kind of cheated for the last little while and didn't invest in brand, and everybody could just go buy demand, you can't anymore. And so if we've got to swing that pendulum back and really be thinking about, like, brand building at the same time.
yeah. No, I think that's spot on. It's such a great call out, and it does, it builds a mode, it creates stickiness, it helps in so many ways from the data side. I love that. Um, you've obviously learned a ton. You're learning a ton. We're talking about learnings. It's a huge theme for the pod. What was something that, in your sales loft experience that really hit home for you that you kind of take with you from a learnings perspective?
I think there's a couple of things, and it also can tie now. Like, if you can be part of a movement, where the market momentum is greater than your company. So for SalesLoft, that was the rise of the SDR, right? There was a new function being developed, and we were changing the way that companies generated pipeline and connected with customers. And so it was just a snowball of like a rolling shift. And so when that momentum happens, that you can grab onto it and like help accelerate, like those are the kinds of companies I look for. Like, obviously the shift now is AI, it's so much AI, but like, how do you start to see around the corner of what that could possibly be? And so I think about agents and agent forces being developed, and like, what do they need to be trained on? They need to be trained on high quality data sets, be that your internal data set, but it's not enough, you need third party data sets, or like G2 is a perfect example of like we understand the categories, all the players in the categories, what users want. And so it's like our data set is perfect for training agents. And so like I'm always trying to look at the next wave ahead and what can you connect onto. Um and I think, that part of like innovation is where I like the company size I like to go. I like the 25 million to 200 million run, and hyper growth and all that goes with that. It's way more fun, I'll tell you.
I love that. Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's a great place to be, and it totally aligns. You, are there certain kind of strategic like mindset shifts or things that you're seeing that you kind of alluded to, a number of them, uh, thinking about scale, right? You talk about going from, that 20 to 200 plus, that's pretty powerful growth. Are there certain kind of mindset shifts that you think are required to do that, um, to really scale? And
Yeah.
you've kind of touched on some of those themes, but I'd love to hear maybe more about how do you counsel people on
I think
that?
there's two, maybe there's three areas that I would say, like if I was talking to a founder, that are super important. I think the first one that is super important is the one that stays consistent. And that is culture and vision. And so, the company you're establishing and what you stand for and how you hold your teams accountable, that to me is like what you stand for is the vision, how you're going to go change the world. And culture is what connects you and your customers, this idea of a shared sense of purpose. And so the successful companies I've seen like are very strong and committed to that, and it's unwavering. And so that's number one. I think number two in hyper growth is that getting very comfortable with rapid change. And you can train people on how to embrace and understand change. We used to joke at SalesLoft, it's like, hey, if you don't like the chair you're sitting in, don't worry, in 4 weeks it's going to move again because we're going to hire another 40 people. And we're
Wow.
constantly moving desks and changing. Drata
Wow.
was the same. I mean, Drata, I was there for just a year, but I mean, we went from 30 million to like almost 70 by the time I left, 100 like within a year and a
Wow.
half. It was
Hmm.
insane change. And so it's like in constant movement, so don't get too comfortable. I think the last thing is that there are natural breakpoints, and so what gets you to 50 is not the same that gets you to 100. From 100 to 250, totally different mindset shift. And so I think that's one of the hardest things for like founders, and like how do they go from founder led, and I know that's a big thing right now, to then like empowering teams and getting to scale in a way that is efficient and effective. And so really thinking through that time, and like the leadership team you hire, and that whole thing of change too. Like I've had to be part of like somebody's reached the maximum of their capacity, and it's not their fault, it's the company's grown beyond what they're at. And so how do you manage your teams? How do you hire the right talent at the right point of the company's inflection? And then the things that people don't like, systems and processes, but they're necessary when you start to get bigger because predictability matters. And so you can't just stay in chaos when you get bigger and bigger. There does need to be some controls put in place to make the scale more efficient, because you can't just keep hiring people. And so, operational people that start to think through that and start building the operational processes that run the company, which, doesn't sound
Mm.
fun, but is so necessary.
Yeah, I love all that. I mean, amazingly good answer. A lot in there to unpack, and the culture
Seen it too many
piece,
times. Yeah.
the operational piece. It's
Yeah.
really amazing. I love it. Um, Thinking through, we talked about this a little bit, right? The lovely topic of alignment of sales and marketing and product. Um, and obviously you're trying to move at pace. You've got your go-to-market strategies. Um, the topics of kind of like unifying and breaking down silos. What have you seen work there? What do you
Mm.
see? You've probably, lived that many times over. What have you seen work well there? Maybe what have you seen not work well
I
there?
was going to say it's works less well than well is
Yeah.
my experience.
Yeah.
The thing that I've seen work well, we'll start there, is really making sure you have alignment at the leadership level. And so that is like, what is the conversation that's had? Does everybody have an equal voice? And as we decide what we're going to do, and more importantly, what we're not going to do we have clarity on that? And then, keeping that alignment going. So however fast you're growing is how often you have to go back and revisit those, the key initiatives of the company. And regardless of the company size, and I've worked in $1 billion business units and I've been in $10 million startups. Three. The magic answer is three. And whenever you go like beyond three, like strategic OKRs or strategic initiatives, I've seen seven, I've seen 10, it you never achieve that. And so I think the hardest part of being great leaders is ruthless prioritization and focus, and then aligning around that. And that's like, how are we going to grow? What's the core of our business? Whatever those things are. A lot of times I like to see like the 70-20-10 rule, or where at G2 we talk about the three horizons. But you like, how do you weed those down so everybody in the company has clarity around what the priorities and initiatives are, so they can align to it.
Yeah.
So that's when it works. And to me, that is a conversation. I don't know if you've had Sangram Vare on your podcast yet.
Not
He wrote
yet.
a book called Move, and he Jeffrey Moore was part of that, and so that's kind of the philosophy that I've aligned to as well. I teach a class on it in Pavilion CMO School.
Oh,
So that kind
amazing.
of strategic alignment is the foundation, I believe, for go to market efficiency and effectiveness. When it doesn't work, it's everybody gets a vote, everybody's project gets initiated, and then there's individual ownership of different things, but the teams aren't cross collaborating. Another thing that breaks is when you have a new leader come in, you have to realign, because they need to be part of the conversation too. And so if you don't go back and facilitate that same conversation of like, here's our priorities, these are why our priorities, do you have new input? Oh, you do. Like, let's take that input and then let's, do we need to do a reset on our strategic initiatives for this year? Or are we just going to, put that like as a test pilot, and then when it's time? So again, like, do you do it every 6 months? Do you do it every year? It depends on the velocity of the company. But that would be key learnings too, is like when new people come in,
Love
a lot
that.
of times it breaks. Yeah.
Love that. And speaking of those like big, pivotal moments, like new people come in, have you had success or seen examples where um, change needs to happen at the, hey, our yearly goal planning session or our strategy or our, you know, core KPIs? I'm curious in your experience how you've seen those. Okay, we have to. I hate to use an overused term like pivot, but we have to make some material changes to like our hiring, our strategy, our brand, our goals for the year. How have you seen that work uh, and not work? Going back to what we shared
Yeah.
earlier.
Well, I would say that, I grew up at Adobe. I spent 17 years at Adobe. And
Wow. Yeah.
so I think when I started, maybe we were a billion. When I left, we were around 5 billion. Like, went from 3,700 employees to, I think there were 12,000 when I left in 2011. And so, we had like an operating rhythm to the business where our 3-year planning would start in June, we'd present it in September, and then the operational planning would happen. And they just had some metrics. It's like, what is the expected growth for, different types of products? Is it an incubator product? Is it a mature product? And if it wasn't maintaining the growth trajectory, then it would go into, like, I joked I would call it to the pasture, but they'd strip out all of the investment and they'd move the development to India, and like figure out what's the smallest set of people to maintain that product that's still like growing at 10% a year, but just not a strategic investment anymore. And therefore the team would be impacted, and so we made those trade-offs. And it was like every October you're kind of waiting to see, is my product going to make it or not? And so at one point we're like, okay, we're not going to do a riff this year, but I think that's also healthy business. You have to, like, what are my, top, like you gotta do the 9 boxes. You gotta like, where is the bottom 5%? And like, how do you continually manage that from a people perspective, but also from a product perspective? Like, are these products growing at the level that we need them to? And if not, we have to be ruthless enough of like, then maybe we sell it or we sunset it or like stop maintenance so we can reallocate those resources. And again, it's hard when it's like somebody's pet project, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you bring the objectivity and data to the conversation and to make those hard trade-offs? That I'm like, that's why we get paid the big bucks. If we say, it's easy to say yes to everything, it's hard to say no, and it's hard to make those trade-offs. But again, like, how do you keep the focus on the right areas of the business? Um,
Yeah.
so it's just,
Have those
yeah,
crucial conversations at a
yeah,
time when it's difficult.
yep,
Speaking of crucial conversations, these high growth environments are not exactly calm and chill and easy, and they can be intense. We've talked about this a bit in terms of, burnout, making sure energy is being managed effectively. What are some practical things that you've seen, some changes that you've made where hey, this made a significant difference? This helped you, your team. Love to learn more about that.
yeah. Yes, I think I posted this on my LinkedIn. I commuted from San Francisco to Atlanta for 4 years every other week. So SalesLoft was in Atlanta. I was constantly on the road. I had two little kids, and
Wow.
I loved every single second. We did stand-ups at 6:20 in the morning, and then I'd have an event in the evening. But it was also the most rewarding job I've ever had.
Yeah.
But I after the fourth year, we just did our rebrand. I was like, can I commit to another chapter? Like, and I was like, I just didn't have the energy left. And energy is kind of part of my like secret weapon. Like, I'm an 8 with a 7 wing on an Enneagram. So I'm like a challenger, but also an enthusiast, or I'm like
Love
a
it.
DI and disc, decisive, but also exciting. So I get like, I
You're
process
bringing
things, I
the
make a
energy.
decision, and I'm like cheerleading it
Yeah.
on to the next. But that's a
Yeah.
lot of energy. And so I ended up having to take a year and a half off. I did some consulting, but still it was, and what I learned in that year and a half was energy and energy management. I had an awesome acupuncturist, and like, I just like, and I've had some physical things that actually shut me down. So my body forced me to do this. And so now I'm just much more cognizant of energy. What do I take energy? Where do I get energy? I color code my calendar, like for this, like this is me giving energy. And so I can't
I
go
can
back to
tell.
back anymore. Yeah. I can't go
Yeah.
back to back anymore. So now I need to have like a half an hour where I'm just like doing focus work or like an easier meeting.
Yes.
Um, Otherwise, like, I'll even like, and now I'm truly feeling like I'll be like, I gotta go take a nap. Like, I'm like the queen of power naps now, and working from home makes it super easy. But even in
Yep.
workplaces, like, people are going to dinner, I'm like, I just need to run back to the hotel. I'll lay down for half an hour. I'll be the first one to leave the party versus the last one to stay. Like, I just can't do it
Yeah.
anymore. And so it's fun, and when I could, but now I just have
Yeah.
to manage things differently. Yeah.
No, 100%. It's fascinating to see like where people draw their energy from, where it kind of becomes, super easy. Are there things that you find in the work world that you're just like, okay, I can do that for
Yeah.
hours on end, but this thing over here, not so much?
Um, well, I was going to take it in a different direction, and I wish I could remember the name of the person that I
Yeah,
learned it from.
sure.
But it was something also, it's like where you draw your energy from your environment. And so, you imagine, I was listening to this podcast, and it's like, when you close your eyes and imagine yourself somewhere, where are you? Are you at the beach? Are you in the mountains?
Hmm.
Are you,
Yep.
in an urban setting? And so how do you put yourself in those environments where you regain your energy? It's one of the reasons I just recently moved. Like, I did not, I was like so tired of sitting in that same chair looking at my neighbor's backyard, and now I have like this beautiful place that I get to, and I
That's
notice that
awesome.
I feel
Love it.
different when I'm here. And
Yeah.
I think you can do that in your workplace too. I think you really do need to evaluate and be like, is this am I being challenged by the work? And so that do I get fulfillment from the work I'm doing? Does it tap into my motivated ability, which is like the thing I enjoy doing? Therefore, it's a good fit. And so it's part of a evaluation framework that I've learned as well around fit. It's called the 6P framework. And so you look at those things, and does what your criteria, does it match the criteria of the company? And you can go back and check it, as the company changes, because dynamics do change. Pressure intensifies as you continue to perform well. Leaders change, and so I just, thankfully, at this point, I've been doing this long enough that I think I've hopefully established a reputation. And, I've just made some decisions where it's like, this isn't the place for me anymore. And,
Yeah.
I don't stay. Where before I
Yeah.
probably felt like, I had to prove like that I could do it.
Yep.
But I just don't feel that same way anymore, thankfully.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant. And I think as we get wiser and older and smarter and all those
Yeah.
things, you've got a lot of data to draw from, and your instincts sometimes are quite a good data set to consider as you gather all that information and make those
Yeah.
calls. But it makes sense.
But even
We
when
we
you're talking
touched
to
on,
young people, right?
yeah,
Both my kids are going into college, and it's like, find what you love doing, it will never be work. And that
yeah,
has been the case for me. I love talking about marketing, and people have been like, should you be a CEO? I'm like, I don't want to be a CEO. That's a tough job. You know that. And right,
yeah,
like I love
yeah,
what I do, and I get great fulfillment out of it. I love, like, going from a creative where, like, a creative session where we're ideating directly to talk about budget and budget management, and like
yeah,
tickle that side of
yeah,
the brain. And like I always say,
yeah,
like, the brain hurt meetings too, like solving tough challenges. Like,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
love doing that. And so,
yep,
I've been lucky enough to pick the job for me. And I could even feel it when I came to G2. Drata was a security company. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna, like, that's my thing. It wasn't my thing. Like, I just couldn't get as excited talking about governance, risk, and compliance as I can about like buying signals. And so,
yeah,
that's also what you learn, as you go through your career of, if you have passion for your job, if you truly believe in the product or the company that you're representing, then it's easy. Yeah.
yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I think there's like an interesting balance, and depending on who you talk to about that whole pursuit of what makes you happy. Obviously, it has to be, somewhat commercially viable, but once you're in that field, generally, like going to those things is really powerful, and like
Hmm.
finding joy in things that you maybe didn't realize you found joy in. I think it's great, and it
Yeah.
comes
I was like,
through.
I'm back with my people, like I feel good.
Yeah,
Like I love going
yeah.
to events now. Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
huge. I mean, gosh, it just people can read it. People can tell,
Yeah.
when you see something, you're excited, you're into it. It's just it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to watch if anyone's in that zone. So I love it. What a great place to kind of like come into our home stretch and take us home on some of the things about you, Sydney, personally. This has just been amazing. So many awesome conversation and learnings and data and thoughts. What's something that people just might not know about you?
I usually do the same one each time, which is, I say I grew up on a cattle ranch, but I think maybe the one that's currently the most prevalent, because I just moved into a new house, is like, I am organized, OCD. Like, I have to like almost like move something so everything is not absolutely perfect. Like, you should see my pantry right now. It's so gorgeous. Or my
Nice.
closet is like meticulously organized. I say that,
Love it.
that might be my next career, is to be a professional closet organizer. So that's what
All right. We might need your services at some point. We'll also have to talk about the cattle ranch thing because I think there may be some good
Okay.
overlapping shared experience there.
Okay. Yeah.
Round barn labs and all. We have lots to talk about.
You ran,
Um,
you ran what?
Round barn labs was partially influenced by growing up on a ranch. There was a cool round
Okay.
barn near our family ranch where we grew up. Grew up on a working ranch as well.
Me too.
So
Okay, yeah.
we'll have to
What kind
talk
of
about that.
cattle ranch?
Cattle for a little while, then
Yeah.
mostly horses, some
Okay.
basic farm animal, petting zoo type stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, it was
Yeah, we
pretty
were we
interesting.
were a we had about 750 head of cattle and 1,000 acres
Wow.
of grain
Okay.
farming, and
Amazing.
it's
That's the real deal.
the true story in there though is uh that it was in the mid 80s when Farm Aid was happening, and so we couldn't make it.
Wow.
So my true story,
Oh,
my humble beginnings is like we worked our butts off and had to sell everything. And so like when you've lived through that, like your appreciation for hard work, but
unbelievable.
also like your appreciation for money and
Unbelievable.
like what it's like to lose
Yeah.
everything. Like, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
trying not to get emotional, but it's I was 13, watched my
Oh,
parents and me go through
God.
it too. Like I worked every day,
Oh,
and so you just, you have
wow.
a different outlook on life after that. Yeah.
That's amazing, Sydney.
Mm.
Wow. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is, I mean, I say working ranch, that's a whole nother level of that's the
Yeah.
real deal. Where were you
Yeah.
based?
Northeast Washington State.
Wow. Okay.
It's north of Spokane, like right at the Canadian
Okay.
border. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. We have lots to
So,
talk about. I
yeah.
did not go through that level, and that's insane. And I can only the level of appreciation and
Yeah.
values you take is real and appreciated.
It is,
Definitely
yeah.
understand
And
some of
both,
it.
I have two older brothers. We're all, super hardworking, very, had created successful careers, and I attribute it to that. Like, never been afraid of hard work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. It
Mhm.
clearly shows, and it's been a testament to your success. That's awesome. Wow. I feel like we can have an old pot about that, but that's another story. Do you have any, fun reads or book recommendations that you're just like, oh man, I got to share with the
I
audience?
wish I was a great reader, but I am addicted to the Smart List podcast. So if you,
My wife loves that.
I'm,
She was
I
talking about
literally,
it
I think,
recently.
oh yeah, I drive from
She
Northern
loves
California
it.
to Southern California often, which is about an 8.5 hour drive, and it just flies by. And even a funnier story is, so when it first came out, it was during the pandemic, and
Oh yeah.
I got a dog like everybody else did in the pandemic, and so it's like, I go for walks with my dog, and then I'd start listening to Smart List. And I've got the fun, I'm like laughing, and like people are like smiling back, and I'd never had
Are you
people smile
okay?
back at me before. I'm like, I used to best watch my walk my dog, I'm sure, with resting bitch face, and now I'm like smiling and laughing and like seeing the interaction of the people like with that. And so, yeah, I'm just a huge fan. Like, I just sit in the car and laugh and like feel like I know those three guys and have met and learned, like,
Yeah.
it fits well for my my Bravo life, which I also, that's my other secret, is like I'm addicted to Bravo. So I'm
Amazing.
good at trivia in that, in those categories. Yeah.
Well, let me know. We'll do trivia night because it's one of my favorites, or trivia at
Oh,
some
nice.
point because
Yeah.
it's a good time.
There
It's
you
just
go.
a good time.
Yep.
That is awesome. Well, I have to share that. My wife will get a kick out of that. She's a huge fan. I hear all the stories of, she's like, oh, this happened on Smart List. This happened.
Yeah.
They're so funny. They
Gordon
did
Ramsay was
this.
the latest one I watched or listened to. So now I know, and I've, like again watched him on TV shows. So I love it. Like, yeah, it's super interesting.
Amazing. Sydney, you absolutely nailed it. It was such a fun, informative conversation, like one of my favorites. Where can people find you and learn more and connect with you?
Please, on LinkedIn, follow me, and I do say that I do respond to DMs. So I try to be as helpful as possible to our
Yeah,
community, and if there's something I can do to help, I do really try. So come follow me there, and if I can do something, DM me.
amazing. So cool. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.